Good evening. I'm Kelda Yoon. A 16-year-old boy is recovering after being shot at a Scarborough high school. It happened in the parking lot of Agincourt Collegiate Institute this morning. The incident prompting the school and several other schools in the area to be put into lockdown. Tonight, the suspect is still at large as police appeal to the public for help. Greg Ross has more.
At least one shot was fired in this parking lot at Agincourt Collegiate this morning, injuring a 16-year-old student of the school. Police say the bullet struck him in the head.
Luckily, it's my understanding, it was a grazing injury.
The victim was taken to hospital and treated for minor injuries. Police say there were no other injuries, although there were several other students in the parking lot at the time.
So I just saw people saying there's a shooter and people are just running everywhere, I was pretty scared, honestly. I didn't know if it was real or not, or if it was a prank.
At this point, the motive for the shooting is unclear, but police say it appears to have been planned.
We believe this to be a targeted event.
The suspect ran from the scene through a nearby neighborhood.
There's an extensive video canvass underway as we speak, and we are asking for those that were in the area in and around 11:51 this morning that may happen to have dash cam footage and or check your security footage, please. We are seeking your assistance in locating this individual.
Police say they were able to get a description of the suspect from witnesses.
Male black, approximately 6 feet tall, with a slim build, wearing dark clothing and a hoodie. And he's described as being 16 or 18 years of age. And he is to be considered armed and dangerous.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
An alleged child sex predator arrested earlier this year is now facing a civil lawsuit over an assault reported 30 years ago. Court documents show Richard Neal is being sued for $1 million in damages by one of his alleged victims. The plaintiff was 10 years old when he told police he was forced to perform sex acts on a stranger in a Brampton park in 1994. The lawsuit comes after Neal was arrested in Toronto in March after a long-running investigation. His charges stem from that attack and two other sexual assaults from the 90s, one on a boy in Kitchener, the other on a girl in Oakville. All three attacks occurred in wooded areas, which led media outlets to dub the unidentified assailant as a woodland rapist. Peel Regional Police have laid 20 charges against Neal, including kidnapping and sexual assault with a weapon. He maintains his innocence. An Ontario judge has sentenced former fashion mogul Peter Nyard to 11 years in prison. Nyard was convicted last November on 4 counts of sexual assault. Jamie Strachan has the latest.
Justice Robert Goldstein called disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nyard a sexual predator who used his position of power and wealth to take advantage of women, calling it a Canadian success story gone very wrong.
Justice Goldstein sentenced Mr. Nyard accordingly and found him to have committed these sexual assaults in a way that makes him, as we have been saying, recognizes the description of him as a sexual predator.
In the sentencing, the judge called Nyard a narcissist who felt entitled to do whatever he wanted. Nyard was convicted of sexually assaulting 4 women in the private bedroom of his Toronto fashion headquarters between the 1980s and mid-2000s. One was just 16. Victims advocate Shannon Moroney read a statement from one of the women.
We did this to ensure every victim of sexual assault will remember this trial and feel the strength and confidence to come forward and not be threatened by social status or money.
Dozens of women from around the world have alleged they were assaulted by Nyard. He faces charges in Manitoba, Quebec, and the United States. Some of those alleged victims were here in court for the sentencing.
Many of us have waited for this day for quite a few years. For me, I'm a 21-year survivor. I've been waiting for this day for 21 years.
The 83-year-old wore a black Canada Goose parka with a hood over his head, his bearded face shielded by a visor. He declined to address the court. The judge mostly rejected calls for leniency based on Nyard's age and failing health. Nyard's lawyer promises to appeal the conviction and the sentence.
So he's just going to continue to defend himself where he can, appeal where he can, and continue to maintain his innocence in all of these matters.
For Nyard, this marks the end of a stunning fall. Once a rich and powerful player in the fashion world, now likely to spend his final years in prison. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
A 51-year-old man is dead after being struck by a vehicle in North York this morning. Police were called to the area of Steeles Avenue West and Weston Road shortly after 6 a.m. The man was rushed to hospital where he was pronounced dead. The driver, a 51-year-old woman, remained at the scene. No word of any charges. The TTC is making moves to crack down on fair evasion. The agency says it loses more than $140 million a year from people using the system without paying. But as Tyler Cheese explains, one method of doing so just got harder.
Until today, riders could use gates like this one here to get on the subway without tapping to pay. But as of this afternoon, the TTC says that's no longer an option.
They're monitored by our collectors. So people like children who are under 12, people who have what's called support person's pass that allow them free access, people who are coming in on a paper transfer. Those gates are there, and you can walk up to them and they'll open without requiring a tap. We're doing away with those.
It's all part of a larger effort the TTC is making to tackle fare evasion all across the system.
We've got more fare inspection happening. We identified some physical gaps in our fare lines that allowed people to sort of sneak around them. We've closed those off.
The agency says by closing off the no-tap gates, it's hoping to recoup around $20 million per year. For now, the change is only in effect on Line 4 in North York, but will eventually roll out across all subway stations. But some are questioning who these measures are targeting.
Who's evading it? Like if it's people who can't afford it, then maybe we should look at the affordability prices. But if it's people who are just trying to take advantage of the system, obviously, I think it's a good idea.
The TTC says it's singling out a specific type of rider with these measures.
There are programs in place for people who are on the margins who maybe can afford a reduced fare. The city has the Fair Pass program. And then there are those people who can absolutely afford to pay and do pay when they're educated or when they're approached by a fare inspector and simply are choosing not to. Those are the people that we're going after.
Transit advocates are supportive of the move, but also say the agency needs to look at the bigger picture and question why some people are choosing not to pay.
For some of them, it could be they don't feel that the system cares about them. They don't feel that the system can be trusted, and therefore it shouldn't be trusted with their money. So more reliable service, more frequent service, more consistent funding from higher levels of government so that it builds up and becomes reliable again is an important part of the conversation.
As the no-tap gates gradually close across the system, collectors will be nearby to provide more information and access to those who normally use them for legitimate reasons. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Air Canada is preparing to suspend operations as early as this weekend. Talks between the country's largest airline and the union, representing thousands of its pilots, are at a stalemate as a strike deadline nears. A shutdown could affect more than 100,000 passengers daily. Dale Manukduk takes a look at the potential impact.
Air Canada says it will ground its fleet of 252 aircrafts if a deal isn't reached with the Airline Pilots Association, or ALPA, which represents more than 5,200 pilots at Air Canada and Air Canada Rouge. The airline says it will happen gradually. Cancellations and grounding could begin as early as Friday. Not good news for these travelers.
What would happen, I would be stuck in the U.S., so that would stink, I guess.
I'm going for a little over 2 weeks, so hopefully it'll all be cleared up by the time I get home.
Pilots voted 98% in favor of the job action last month. Starting Sunday, the union or Air Canada may issue a 72-hour strike or lockout notice, which would trigger the carrier's 3-day wind-down plan. The sticking point is over wages. Air Canada pilots are looking to match their American counterparts, who last year secured 4-year pay hikes ranging from 34% to 40%. Air Canada's CEO says Air Canada believes there is still time to reach an agreement with our pilot group, provided ALPA moderates its wage demands, which far exceed average Canadian wage increases. ALPA members last negotiated a contract in 2014.
As somebody who works in aviation, I understand their concerns extremely well because they are definitely underpaid for sure.
Everyone's having a hard time putting groceries in the fridge, paying the rent, dealing with mortgage prices. So I understand completely that people are looking for more.
Air Canada says all customers who have their flights canceled will be eligible for a full refund. They've also been working with other carriers to secure space in the event of flight cancellations, although that will be very challenging. And since August 27th, there's been a goodwill policy in place for those who have bookings between September 15th and September 23rd to make any changes at no cost, and that policy will be expanded if need be.
You know, the carriers are already starting to have increases in fares for people that are looking to buy tickets from September 17th on. So yeah, there is going to be a price increase. Carriers are going to take advantage of an Air Canada shutdown.
In a statement to CBC Toronto, the ALPA says Air Canada should stop threatening to disrupt air travel and come to the bargaining table with serious proposals to keep the flagship Canadian carrier competitive in the global aviation market. Air Canada anticipates it would take 7 to 10 days for normal operations to resume once the complete shutdown is in place. When asked if other staff will get paid in the event pilots strike or are locked out, Air Canada says they'll make decisions about staffing at the appropriate time, depending on how the situation evolves. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
The Ontario Premier attacked the federal NDP leader today. Doug Ford giving his take on the end of the Liberal NDP agreement that has kept the Liberal minority government in power. Queen's Park reporter Lorena Redekop has those details.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone.
At an unrelated announcement, Premier Doug Ford was asked about the political shift in Ottawa, with federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh last week saying he'd ended his party's deal with the Liberals.
As far as I'm concerned, MP Singh he's just blowing smoke. There's nothing more important to these greedy politicians than collecting a pension. And I'll be floored, and I'll stand up here and apologize to all the greedy politicians if he calls the election early.
This repeats the same attack line used by the federal Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, who wants Singh to force an election, but raised doubts that he would before February 2025, when Singh becomes eligible for an MP pension.
So that he can qualify for a $2.2 million taxpayer-funded pension.
Poilievre became eligible for his own MP pension in 2010. Singh's spokesperson previously called the pension accusation ridiculous. Today, NDP MP Matthew Green saying in a statement, "That's pretty rich coming from Premier Ford, who has built his entire career on the coattails of his family's last name and is now under criminal investigation for corruption." That referring to the RCMP Greenbelt investigation of Ford's government.
I think you're seeing the kind of political campaign version of Doug Ford. He seems to go back and forth between the two versions. There's the conciliatory, work with it to get stuff done and advance files Doug Ford, and then there's the elbows up political campaign driving the political message Doug Ford.
He also sees Ford's words as a message to the federal Conservatives that he's willing to work together if they form government. While Ford and Poilievre are both Conservative, their parties are seen as different.
There isn't a sense that Poilievre and Ford are close friends or closely aligned, but nonetheless, they do have similar bases. They do have similar constituents that they draw from for elections.
Provincially, MPPs don't receive any pension. The most recent PC member to leave government, Todd Smith, cited that as a reason he left in an interview with a radio station. Ford today on his departure.
But if there's other opportunities to make 3, 4, 5 times as much money, take care of his family, God bless him.
Ford was also asked again about a potential early election, saying he hasn't decided yet whether Ontarians will go to the polls next year, 1 year ahead of schedule. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. Halton Police and the Haldimand County OPP have announced numerous arrests and dozens of charges following a months-long investigation into gun and drug trafficking in the region. Project Catfish began in May of this year with the help of multiple police services in the GTHA. The investigation resulting in the seizures of firearms, $120,000 in cash and drugs, including methamphetamine, cocaine, oxycodone, and fentanyl. 11 people are now facing a combined 55 charges. And a warning to the public following a rash of scams involving fake taxis. Fraudsters are impersonating legitimate taxis in many parts of the country, particularly here in Ontario, buying fake roof signs from online retailers such as Amazon. Sophia Harris has more on the scam and attempts to protect passengers.
It's called the taxi scam, and police in several parts of Canada have recently issued alert that the scam is making the rounds in their city. There are several variations of the scam, but they all end the same way. A fraudster impersonating a taxi driver demands that a customer pay with a debit card. During the transaction, the scammer records the card's PIN number, secretly steals the debit card, and hands the customer an identical-looking fake card. In July, Catherine Kazodi of Calgary was a victim of the scam. The day after she took a ride in a fake cab, she discovered nearly $2,000 was missing from her bank account. Her bank later reimbursed her, but she's still rattled by the experience.
It really felt like an invasion of privacy and a violation to be a victim of this scam. I was terrified, I was in shock.
Police and the Canadian Taxi Association say the fraudsters have a helping hand. With the click of a button, they can purchase a generic but official-looking taxi roof sign on e-commerce sites such as Amazon. To help combat the scam, the association has asked Amazon to stop selling the signs. However, the online retail giant has declined, stating that it's perfectly legal to sell the product.
I'm disappointed by their response because I don't think they understand the moral responsibility that they have when it comes to selling something that can lead to either fraud or other serious incidents.
The Taxi Association says it will now explore other avenues, such as lobbying for provincial legislation that regulates the sale of taxi signs. In the meantime, it looks like the best way to stop this scam is to tell people about it, so they can be on guard if a taxi driver insists they pay by debit card. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
PWHL fans now know the name of the team they'll be cheering for in the upcoming women's hockey season. The league unveiling the team names for the 6 inaugural franchises today. Ali Chiasson has more on the Toronto Scepters.
The hype started with the league tweeting a cryptic photo, a painting of a queen in the color blue. Then the guessing game. The Toronto Royals? The Royal Blues? The Monarchs? Well, now it's official. All hail the Toronto Scepters. Natalie Spooner of the Toronto Scepters. What do you make of the name?
I'm excited. I think it's an amazing name. I think for our team, we'll really be able to rally around that and kind of use that as strength and power, in whether it's our stick or we're holding a scepter.
The mayor is a fan of the name.
It denotes power, authority, and championship.
The branding opportunity is big. There's merch already available online. And their castle, the Coca-Cola Coliseum, which is about twice the size of the venue they played their first season in. So the league is counting on those fans showing up, as they did in that inaugural season.
The atmosphere in there is so cool. So to be able to be there permanently, to be able to get more fans in the building, I think it's a great spot for us.
How about those fans?
It's growing on me. I think we'll get used to it. We all decided that we like the logo, we like the colors. And though, I don't know, celebrating monarchy isn't maybe the lean in we would have taken, we can get behind the fact that they're going to be strong queens in our city.
I like it, but I like the Huskies a little more.
Okay, you were hoping for the Huskies.
Yes. I think it was my favorite that stadium that it's ever been at.
Yeah, why?
I don't know, it's just so big, and a lot of people, it's full and big. That shows how many fans there are.
All the PWHL names were revealed today. There's the Montreal Victoire, the New York Sirens. It was the now Minnesota Frost that eliminated Toronto in their playoff run last year. But this season, Natalie Spooner says, with her team's new royal name, long may they reign.
We're going to bring another winning team to Toronto and go after that Walter Cup and be royalty in the city.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's go to Riley Laychuk now for a check on your forecast. And Riley, a pretty damp and relatively cool start to the week here in Toronto.
Well, Kelda, another above seasonal day for some parts of southern Ontario where you didn't see some showers and some thunderstorms. Really, we did see temperatures really warming up across the southern part of the province today. So 22 in London, into southwestern Ontario, 26 is for Chatham, Kent, and Windsor. So you don't have to go too far to see some warmth and some above seasonal temperatures once again today. And that trend is continuing as we get into the next several days. First off, though, we go from warmth to cold temperatures overnight tonight. A frost advisory in place for parts of central Ontario, Petawawa into Ottawa as well. Could see lows tonight in that 2-3 degree range for places like Petawawa into North Bay tonight. So yeah, fall is coming. We won't see temperatures this cool throughout the rest of southern Ontario, but certainly we are looking at temperatures above seasonal on the other side of the scale as we get through the next few days. So clear skies through the overnight period tonight. As we start Tuesday, another mainly sunny sky on the way for tomorrow. This is the start of another dry trend for us as we see a ridge of high pressure building in, which I'll talk about in a second. And what this is going to do is really push up our temperatures and really push in some warm southerly air and also clear skies out. So really not much of a precipitation chance as we get into the next several days. Even as we get into Wednesday, mainly sunny to start the day. Watch out for a little bit of thin high weather cloud as we get through the day on Wednesday, but by and large, we're looking at sunny conditions continuing through Wednesday, through Thursday, and into the weekend. So here's that high pressure ridge I was talking about. And as we get into the day on Tuesday, you can start to see this warm pocket of air that's been over northwestern Ontario start to push a little bit further south and a little bit further east. So by the time we get into later Wednesday into Thursday, that's when we will be in that peak heat and that peak dryness as we get through the middle part of the work week here. That does continue this warm trend as we get through later Friday. Could start to see that breaking down as we get into the weekend, leading to maybe a little bit of cloud cover. No real chance of precipitation, though, at least in the immediate forecast. And these temperatures look like they will continue as we get into the long range as well, which I'll talk about in just a moment. First, a look at your early morning temperatures. So 11 in Toronto, 8 in Hamilton overnight tonight, up to 13 through parts of southwestern Ontario. And as mentioned, the sunshine continuing, 25 on the way for Wednesday, 27 for Thursday. Places like Windsor could top 30 through the end of the work week in Kelda. High 20s continuing into the weekend as well.
Thanks so much.